Hello everyone, it's September 28, 2022. I'm here to do a market recap. So I traded 4 stocks today. To begin with, I traded AMD. I started AMD at the pre-market and had to close my position here. And then I traded AMD a couple of times today, over trading basically. But with that, move, it had been on this range, this pivot point R3 and S3. So the SPY had been strong today. So I was trading them based on the SPY, and with the SPY having that move, which we broke from yesterday's low. Yesterday's close we had 363, and the high of yesterday was 370, and then low of yesterday was 360. So we went above that 370, just about to go back down to that 370 as well. Market just closed, and with that AMD over trading, I just have 48 bucks there. And then BIIB, what I saw in BIIB is it is a gap up, and for BIIB it had been on this range before, 188 all the way to 222. Then today it had moved more than 30%, so this one is very bullish. But on the open, what I saw was it is very weak. So what the scanner had picked up was this move right here. So from yesterday 199, and then it opened at 338 and then went all the way to 288. So when the market opened, I saw that we already had that move from 338 all the way to 276. So it did had that pop to 307, but then we were not able to keep this low here, low of that pre-market. Yeah, given that there is a wick right here, but there is two candlesticks there, which is a consolidation part. This one is a 15-minute chart. So what I saw at the open is it's not able to hold that pivot line right here, which is 275. So it was also trading under the VWAP. So what I did was shorted it at the loss of VWAP. So at the loss of this candlestick right here and loss of VWAP, I shorted it there. Very tight stop loss right there, just because this stock had been moving outrageously. So with the entry here 277, took my first partial 275, and then had been partialing all the way to 271, and the last one is 269. So with that move, I was able to get almost 4K for that, just because it had moved outrageously from 199 to 338. So that was the trade for the day. And the next one is MU. What MU had been doing is it also had been reflecting what the SPY had been doing. So from yesterday is very bullish. We do have that range from 49.4 all the way to 50.61. And then what I saw today was this stock right here had been respecting the pivot point, the Camarilla pivot points. So yesterday, looking at the Camarilla pivot point, we have R3 and S3, and it closed above that Cam pivot point. So bullish. And then today, we have the S3, R3 right here, and how the stock had opened is below that S3. So it's still in indecision. If the stock had opened above this pivot point right here or above the R3, then I will be long bias on this from the start, but I've been looking at the SPY, and what I saw SPY was doing was it also was trending higher. So I ended up riding this one to the upside, and I got stop out right here. Couple of stubs right here until I get that move from this pivot point, because if you can see here, it touched that pivot point couple of times. So when it touched the pivot point right here, I went long again, cover, adding to the position, cover, and then adding to the position, adding, and then cover. We touch again that pivot point, which is that blue line. So entered, sell my position, and then all out here. So I did do a couple of stubs there, and then at this move right here, so I entered with a big position here at 50.25, 50.3 partial here, and was able to capture that move of that pivot point all the way to 51.09. So with that move and with this big shares right there, I was able to capitalize on that and was able to get at least 2K for that move. Then the last trade was TLT. TLT had been a mover as well today. It had moved from, so the open is around 102 in that cam pivot point right there, all the way to 104. So what I saw here was it is trending as well above that pivot point. So game plan was I would like to short this one since I saw that this is overextended. So I shorted here at that pullback and expecting this one to break the VWAP, which it did not. I did add to my position here, but then covered here. So with that, and then also re-entered here short, but I just got stopped out. So with that little move, I only got $18 for that. So for today, I got 6,000 for that trade of AMD, BIIB, MU, and TLT. And so the market just closed. SPY, looking at this one, we're still on that consolidation. So for the daily chart, what we can see here is the last time we were on this range was back in June 17, 2022. So it had been more than 3 months that we are on this range. So we can still be on that consolidation there. There's no big news or catalyst yet for this SPY to jump higher or to move higher, but we did see that bullish candlestick today that have moved from 362 all the way to 371. So with that, we were mostly doing pivot point, Camarilla pivot points, just because we are in that range. It is just later in the day where we have broken that yesterday's high, which is 370.5. So 370.5 is technically right here. So it is around past 2 or 3 in the afternoon that we broke that yesterday's high, but we are now heading to that level still. So SPY is still undecided on whether it wants to go higher or lower, but with that little bit of a move with a range kind of day, the best strategy there is to use Camarilla pivot point, because you are using that strategy of a range bound. So if it goes on the R3, then just like MU is a perfect example of how Camarilla pivot point can be used on this range bound trade. So if I turn off this pre-market data, you can see here, this is where the R3 and S3, and look at how this stock had been respecting that R3 and S3. So it went past through the R3, but just for a couple of bucks, or specifically 0.92 all the way to 0.07, so just around 10 cents, and then went back to that S3, bounce again, went back to the S3, little bounce there, little bounce, and was able to go all the way to that R3, which is at 50.93. So again, if it is a range bound trade, and when I say range bound trade, it is when the SPY, for instance this one, at the open, SPY opened right here at, let me just change my pen, so SPY opened right here today, and at one point it went to that low of around 362.50, but for the most part it had been going back and forth this price range right here, and this price range right here is inside this candlestick right here. So that is what we call an inside bar play. So meaning if you are gonna be looking for other stocks, you will be looking at a range trade as well, just because SPY is a range trade. Of course there are some exceptions to that is those stocks that are massively had gap up or massively have gap down, because those stocks that have those massive gap up or gap down move are the one that has a big catalyst, and those catalysts, they typically do not follow the move of the SPY. But for the most part that we have traded, which is the MU, that was the strategy that I used, which is the pivot point right there. TLT, a very small move there, but having a very tight risk management or tight stop loss, was able to not make this one as a red trade. AMD as well, very tight stop loss, and look at how this daily chart from AMD kind of looks like the one from the SPY. So this one, this is the range of today's, so this candlestick is inside this candlestick right here. So that is that range bound right there for AMD. And so that's the reason why I like looking at all 4 time frames, 15 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes daily chart. I do have 2 15 minutes here just because I was looking at a higher time frame today. PIB is a bit of an exception because this one, what I did was an opening range breakdown, given that it had gone up so much that it is due for a pullback, and it showed no signs of conviction at all that this has some juice for this to push higher, since right before the open we already saw that move from 297 all the way to 280, so that is $17 move. So with that opening range breakdown strategy, this is the low of the pre-market with the exception of the wick right here. And with that low of the pre-market, I entered short and cover all the way down here. And then all throughout the day, it was just going range as well. So from 265 all the way to 276. And then MU again is a perfect example of that Camarilla pivot point where it respects that R3 and S3, and it's more clear when that pre-market data is off. So this blue line right here, that is the Camarilla pivot point line right there, this blue and this blue, and look at how it had been respecting that line right there. And then the last one is the TLT, which is again just a very small move. So with that, I hope you had a great trading day, and as always, See you at the next one.